In general, the Adept in Mass Effect 2 is more similar to its ME1 counterpart than any of the other classes in the game. Your main goal as an Adept is to use your biotic abilities to control enemy movement before finishing them off with your combos. However, the key difference between them is that in Mass Effect 2, enemies with any amount of protection are largely immune to biotic abilities, and on higher difficulties, all enemies start off with some form of protection. So the most effective Adepts are able to quickly deal with armor, barriers, and shields. Luckily as an Adept, you're capable of dealing with both armor and barriers using your warp. This leaves you vulnerable to just shielded opponents, which segues perfectly into your bonus powers. In order to make you into a more well-rounded Adept, you'll need to take an ability that allows you to strip away enemy shields. And there's really just one bonus power that lets you do this: Energy Drain. I covered this ability in more detail in my Vanguard build, so check it out if you want to know more. But for this build, all you need to know is that Energy Drain damages shields and synthetic enemies. With it, Shepard will be able to strip away all 3 types of enemy protections in the game, without needing to rely on their squad mates. And by doing so, frees Shepard up to quickly finish off enemies with their biotics. Now let's move on to advanced weapon training. Adepts, along with engineers and sentinels, start the game being restricted to just their pistols, SMGs, and heavy weapons. So when it comes time to choose a new weapon, they're able to choose between assault rifle, shotgun, and sniper rifle training. So let's go through each one. Assault rifles can be a powerful option, as they give you access to high damage rifles like the Vindicator and Matlock. But as some of you have pointed out in my Sentinel build, outside of these 2 choices, assault rifles can be a bit redundant, since you already have access to SMGs like the Locust. Shotguns, on the other hand, are generally the worst choice, as Adepts don't possess high defenses or abilities that allow you to close the gap, like Vanguards do. As such, this option should only be taken by the most experienced players. Sniper rifles are probably the best option for Adepts, as they allow you to damage enemies and strip their defenses from a distance. Some players might be resistant to this idea, since Adepts don't inherently possess the ability to slow down time while sniping, like soldiers and infiltrators do. However, the Adept's arsenal of crowd control abilities allow them to pin enemies in place, giving you the time you need to better line up shots. Now let's talk about Shepard's skills. By the time I reached level 30, I had maxed out Warp, taking Heavy Warp for the increased damage. I put 1 point into Throw. I maxed out Singularity, taking Heavy Singularity. I'll explain this choice in more detail later. I maxed out Pull, taking Pull Field, but I skipped Shockwave. I took Biotic Mastery up to its 4th rank, and took Bastion for the increased power duration. And finally, I maxed out Energy Drain, taking Area Drain to strip the shields of multiple targets at once. Shepard's role in the squad revolves almost entirely around setting up and detonating warp bombs. As I mentioned before, by using Warp and Energy Drain, Shepard is able to remove all 3 types of enemy protections, allowing them to lift enemies into the air with Pull or Singularity, before hitting them with Warp for double damage. Going back to Singularity, you're probably wondering why we're going for Heavy instead of Wide. This is because, unlike most biotic powers, Singularity still has an effect on protected enemies, holding them in place for the ability's duration. This effect pairs well with sniper rifles, giving you more time to hit the target before they move or take cover again. As such, maxing out duration is essential. But keep in mind that the larger a target is, the shorter the duration of Singularity. Now, let's talk about your squad. Since Shepard is able to strip all 3 types of enemy protections already, your squad is more open to you than in my previous builds. However, I do recommend taking advantage of one squad mate that has an ammo power. This will raise Shepard's damage and the whole squad's effectiveness. Also, for those of you that haven't noticed, I prefer having 2 methods to strip each of the enemy protections in the game. So with that said, there are a number of different squads that could work well, but the best squads for most situations were Miranda and Grunt. So let's start by talking about everyone's favorite tank bread. By the time I reached max level, I took Grunt's concussive shot up to its 2nd rank. I maxed out his incendiary ammo, taking squad ammo. I maxed out his Krogan Berserker passive skill, taking Warlord, to maximize his weapon damage. And finally, I took his fortification ability up to his 3rd rank, to further increase his survivability. Thanks to his substantial health, Grunt can act like the tank for your squad. soaking up damage, distracting enemies, while increasing the squad's weapon damage with his ammo power. Now, let's talk about Miranda. By the time I hit level 30, I maxed out her overload, taking area overload. I maxed out her warp, taking unstable warp. I maxed out her Cerberus officer skill, taking Cerberus tactician, to increase the maximum health of the squad. And finally, I left 1 point in her slam ability. I took the AoE evolutions for both of her main abilities, allowing her to strip the defenses of multiple targets at once. This will allow Shepard to immediately start setting up their warp bombs. Additionally, the health boost provided by her passive skill pairs very well with Grunt's already substantial health, further justifying Grunt's Warlord evolution, as his defenses are already very high. Now let's talk about Shepard's weapons and armor. Your choice of SMGs and heavy pistols is largely based on a combination of personal preference and the weapons that you have available, but your choice of sniper rifles is a different matter. As an adept, you have access to the Mantis, the Viper, and the Incisor, if you're playing on Legendary Edition or the Aegis pack installed. The Mantis is probably the worst choice, as the Mantis can only fire one shot before reloading, making your misses that much more costly. The Viper, on the other hand, has a higher fire rate and ammo capacity, making it a great choice if precision is not your strength, as it's essentially the Matlock with a scope on it. Alternatively, the Incisor exists somewhere in between the first two choices, providing you with a larger clip than the Mantis, but a lower firing rate than the Viper. But where the Incisor shines is its 3-round burst firing, which allows the gun to inflict more damage to shields. Potentially any of these weapons could be a strong choice, depending on your skill level, but I prefer the Viper over the other choices, since it punishes you the least for misses. Shepard's armor, on the other hand, is a very simple choice. The Blood Dragon armor will give Shepard a 15% boost to their power damage, and 10% boost to their shields. If you don't have access to that armor set, there's a number of armor pieces that will boost Shepard's power damage as well. However, they will never boost it as high as the Blood Dragon armor would. Thank you for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to see what I'm working on in between videos, so it doesn't feel like I'm ghosting you for a month, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at build_wizard.